So we would sniff that and then, you know, chug some food coloring. And we're in front of all this white paper, and now we've got high-speed shots of, like, you know, blood red. And it goes on from there. Now there's something that is really interesting. The other thing that we did was we, as far as the nasal secretions, that got even more exotic because I spent about a week tracking down fluorescent dyes, and I eventually found that there was just this one chemical that was actually non-toxic. I found a toxic one first, and Adam went and used that. So I dug around some more, and I found the straight stuff, the actual powder that they make the dye from, this particular stuff is totally transparent when it's in a liquid and just in normal lighting. So and I rigged it into a large syringe with rubber bands kind of pressing the syringe, and a skinny tube that went up the back of his shirt and along his glasses and down around his nostril. And so I made my own little tiny valve on it so that it would drip at exactly the right way. We talked to a doctor and, you know, got nasal secretion amounts and so on. It's like 30 cc's or something in an hour is the maximum that you would expect. And so I dialed it in exactly like that. The funniest thing with it was, and which you probably won't see on the show when it comes out in a few months, is that Adam developed a sympathetic cold from this because, you know, it was like clockwork. You watch, you know, you're all used to having colds, and you get a little bit of a wet thing there, and it's just dripping. And he started doing this whole thing that you do when you've got a cold and you've got an itchy nose and so on. He actually started getting congested and everything else. But we set him up with a dinner party, and I won't tell you how it all turns out, but suffice it to say that you could, with the way that we approached it with this thing, you could look at him and he looks just like you do, but you turn on a black light and you could read off of the light that was coming off of him. You got this bright orange stuff that it's like day glow orange, as bright as you can possibly get, and it was just amazing. So that's a good example of how you ask the question, how do we deal with science and the kind of stuff that we do and end up making it entertaining and interesting. Well, we start out with something as colds and flu, you know, what's that? And here we somehow, I don't know how we do it, but somehow we ended up having a tremendous amount of fun with that because of this, it's organic, you just kind of get into it and start to break it down, and you play with it just like the puppy. It's really, I think a lot of creative processes, you know, if you're an adult, you don't tend to think in those terms, but that sort of non-linear kind of just, it's like the puppy got a hold of the rag, you know, and you're tugging on it. You keep tugging, and sooner or later, you know, off comes the tablecloth and the dishes are all over the floor, and it's fun.
All of them are fun. I know my favorite. My roommate and I watch it all the time. My favorite myth is when you had a water heater, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. You turn off the safety valve and let the pressure build up and build up and build up and everything. And the myth was whether or not a water heater would build up enough pressure to not only explode but turn into a rocket and go through the first floor of the building and launch into space or whatever. And it ended up, if you haven't seen the episode, sorry I'm going to ruin it, it ended up shooting through the roof of a kind of a fake building that he made, but structurally sound. So that's my favorite.
Well, and speaking of that, by the way, at the very end when I stopped talking today, we brought a thing that I like to refer to as explosion porn. The audio guys are instructed to really turn this up. This is something you won't see, and I hope they've got the good bass on it. of all the explosions, I mean, a lot of people, oh, the cement truck, you know, yay. The water, you know, if you've got a chemical that goes off, you know, you have to be really far away from it. And it's just sort of a chemical reaction. You know, it has its own. Actually, we kind of, you know, at this point, I think we've done something like 2,500 explosions. So it's almost like it's kind of like you know, like a fine wine. Oaky overtones with a hint of raspberry. We have a thing like in the case of explosions, it's terms like brisance. It's a sort of some things have a real push to them, and other things have more of a crack and a, you know, ripping and tearing kind of quality. But the thing about the water heaters is that it's just this thing that you're sitting there. You have to be there to see these things go off. You're sitting there watching it for like, you know, a half hour or something, and you're watching the numbers climb and and it's just sitting there like, you know, it's all friendly and, you know, there's nothing going on, everything's fine, and it doesn't show anything. And then what happens there, in case you don't know, and I don't know how much this gets across on the show, but the water heaters have a cylindrical outside, obviously, and they have kind of a dome top. On the bottom, they have a dome top, but it's concave. It goes inwards. And so as the pressure builds, eventually that inverts and it becomes convex. And that folding out there is like there's a weld that folds that in there. And when that folds, it pops, and that weld breaks clean, almost like you opened it with a can opener, all at once, though. And so we actually have plans for the producers actually had to stop us on some of those because we could just go on, you know, for you know, have hour after hour of water heater shenanigans. They're trying to get us to space it out a little bit so people don't burn out on water heaters. We have rockets, cannons, and I want to do some, you know, put it on on a go-kart frame or something.
Have you ever tried to bust a myth that's just I've gone completely wrong?
Well, yeah, there's one, and it's pretty. Yeah, there's one that will never air. And you know, when maybe your mom, when you're a kid, you go to the supermarket, and you want the sugary cereal, you know, that is totally unhealthy, and she says, no, you can't have that. The box is more nutritious than the cereal is. Well, we tested that. And, to do that, we got some mice, and we had 4 cages, and we had, you know, some normal food, or some of the normal stuff they eat, some nutritious cereal, some sugary cereal, and then we had some. The 4th cage had, and each cage had 3 mice in it. The 4th cage had the cardboard in it, which I produced by I took the boxes off of some cereal, put it in a blender with some water, and put some like sweet and low stuff in it, so it kind of, at least there was something that might make them want to eat it. And I, you know, blended it all up and then pushed it through a tube to kind of extrude it out into a pellet shape and let it dry, and that's what we fed them. And this was all going along fine for about a week, and you know, we put them in on Monday, and we were checking on them every day. And it comes to Friday, and everybody's still fine. Nobody was looking, you know, unhappy or unhealthy or anything. I went in to check before we shut down on Friday to make sure they had water and everything. And I looked at them all, and the 4th cage that had been eating the cardboard. You know, they were fine. They were just maybe a little bit jumpy or something, but I didn't think anything about it. And then I come in on Monday, and there were no longer 3 mice in that cage. There was one very fat mouse. two mice were kind of like what's left after you've had corn on the cob. A tail and a rib cage and a head. And, you know, and Adam, you know, the cameras, of course, are there, and Adam comes in and, you know, he picks up the little fat mouse and passes it. The camera, and this is what happens when you find